So here I am, and I've been hungry for some time, and I'm holding out hope for ice fishing, and now I know ice fishing isn't going to happen. And I was getting to the point where I could feel my time and my body starting to wind down. And I had had these few goals for myself that I was kind of holding out, like, you know, I'm probably not going to win because I'm just not bringing in enough food to have it be sustainable to be out here. But that doesn't mean I can't have success. So what does success look like? And one of the things I came to was like, well, 8 weeks out here in this amazing, wild, rugged place. That would be success. That would be incredible. And then my traps started coming in. The rabbit drought ended, and I was successful with my traps for again. And then it was like, oh, 8 weeks came and went, and it was fine. So then I was like, well, okay, reassess. What's success now? And then I was like, well, 10 weeks. 10 weeks by myself in the Arctic, hunting and gathering for food. That would be amazing. That's success. Of course it is. And so here I was, and it was day 70. And I was at the place that had felt like success. And then I'm like, well, okay, but I'm still here. I'm still fine. My birthday is in a few days. What's success now? So day 70 was my definition for success. And then there were 3 other things that I was really holding out for, like, okay, day 70 would be success, but I could stay even longer if some of these things happened. 1, ice fishing. That would be incredible. 2, getting to Beaver Island, where I know there's probably a beaver lodge. And then the 3rd thing was that I knew there was a wolf in my area. I hadn't seen it, but one of the crews coming in to do a med check had seen it from the helicopter out on the ice. And I really wanted to see it. I just wanted to see that wolf once. So it's like, okay, well, those are the things that I want to do. And then my experience can be complete. So I go out onto the ice to check out Beaver Island, and it's a little late in the day. So first I'm thinking that I'm just going to set myself up for the next day to really have a good explore. So I bring all of my gear around to the far side, ready for me to head out the next day. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm right here right now. The island's right there. I'm just going to go for it. So I go out over the ice to Beaver Island, and sure enough, I was right. I was right about the location of the Beaver Lodge. However, it was a long way from shore. By the time I got there, it was definitely getting pretty late in the day, and it was very clear that there was no way through that beaver lodge. It was built in an area with a lot of clay, and they had great big logs that were stacked really well and then really tightly packed in with clay. There was no way I was getting through those walls into the beaver below, and even if I made an attempt to, they would be out and under the ice because they always have an exit in their lodge under the ice. So there was no way I was going to get those beaver. So there were those last 2 calorie sources that I'd been really holding out for that were clearly done. So it's so cool to be out there on the ice further than I've ever gotten to go, with all of this land accessible for the first time that was just open water for so many weeks of my time out. I decided to explore a little bit further, even though it was getting a little close to dark, and I went further out onto the ice. And after walking for a while, I looked down, and right parallel to my tracks are wolf tracks on the ice. So exciting. And it was like this pinnacle experience I had been waiting for. So I went on and I followed those tracks for a while. I was really hoping to get to see the wolf. And I'd been going for a while, and the tracks were clearly not super fresh, so it wasn't going to happen. It was partly just the adventure and the excitement of being out there. And it's getting a little bit dusky, it's getting a little bit hard to see. I'm very aware of how far I am from my shelter and it getting dusky, but that sense of adventure was just so strong in me. I just kept going, and I got to this place where the surface of the water wasn't entirely level, which was weird, and I was like, what's going on here? And I went closer and looked, and then there were different colors in the water. It wasn't just, flat blue or black ice. It was kind of brown. And then I'm standing there and I hear this weird noise, and I'm like, what is that noise? And then I realize it's gurgling. And then I look down, and all of a sudden I realize why there's colors in the water, why the water is a weird texture and not level, and why I'm hearing that noise. I'm standing on a frozen river. There is water flowing right beneath my feet, and it's dusk, and I am far from my shelter. And in that moment, my communication device beeps, and I get this message from the production crew that are tracking me on GPS, and they say, turn around right now and head for home. You are out of bounds. And who knows how long that message had been sent, because the satellites are bad. But I'm out of bounds, it is dusk, and I am standing on a frozen river, which is very dangerous because the ice is way thinner under moving water. But I'm already there, so what do? Rather than go the shortest route off of the river, I decide to go back the way I had come because it had held me once, so I knew it should be able to support my weight. So I go back and my heart is just pounding, and I know that that was very foolish, and I know that somewhere in a room people are looking at my little dot on a map and probably freaking out because I'm sure that they know from their maps and the GPS that I am standing on a river, and it's really dangerous, and it is way too late for them to be able to fly the helicopter because they can't fly it after full light, and it is already dusk. So that was quite a night. And I get back to my shelter, and again I'm at this point of like, okay, now I've explored the ice fishing, it's not going to happen. I've explored the beaver lodge, it's not going to happen. I saw wolf tracks, which was like the pinnacle thing I was waiting for, and I reached 70 days. Those are all the things I said was success. And I know that my body is winding down. All of a sudden, I'm starting to be aware that my time might be winding down, and I don't want it to. I don't want to hear it. I want to be there so bad, and it's almost my birthday, but all of these little signs are starting to hit me. And up until this point, I had felt fine in my body because, yes, I had some awareness of how skinny I was getting, but I hadn't really been paying that much attention to it because I felt so good. I felt so strong. When they would come and do medical checks, they would ask me about how I felt about being so skinny and like, are you having trouble sleeping because you're uncomfortable, because you're so bony? And I was thinking, no, I don't know. I just need to put some more boughs on my bed. What are you talking about? I wasn't really paying close attention because I felt so strong and good. But at this point, I'm starting to actually feel my body. And the only time I can really do that is when I'm in my sleeping bag at night, because besides then I have heaps and heaps of layers on all the time, right? I'm not ever seeing or interacting with my body like that because it is too dang cold. So laying in my bed one of those nights, maybe day 70, 71, I start actually feeling. And all along I was like, you know what? I am a round lady. I've got plenty of reserves. Like, even if I get really skinny, I can live off of my boobs and my butt for some time. But then I started to actually feel them. And feel that those knobs right there, those were my hips. And actually, I don't even have a butt anymore. It's pretty much just flat from my hip bones down to my thighs. And my boobs, they don't really exist. They're flat sacks of skin. And the feeling of my ribs and my collarbone, all of a sudden I was like, oh, for the first time I get what they're talking about. And it is too cold to not be eating. And I have not gotten anything in my traps for days. And the way the weather is, and the fox being here, I might not get anything else in my traps. So this is all kind of dawning realizations. And at the same time, and I talk about this in my series about my body and my physical experience out there, I'm getting to the point where I'm a little bit less in loving gratitude all the time. It's getting harder for me to go down to the lakeshore and sing the sun down. The last week out there, I didn't even have a dance party. That had been so important for me, but part of the dance party was get out there and shake my booty and enjoy life. And I was very aware that I didn't have any booty left to shake, and I didn't have the extra calories to be out there doing it in the cold. This was huge. So The next day, I'm walking my trap line and it's empty, and I'm thinking about my time, and I'm thinking about, wow, when are they going to pull me? It's going to be any day now. I know the next med check, my chances are not good. And I'm thinking about that and the fact that it's going to be sometime around my birthday, and hopefully they just won't pull me before my birthday. Can I just get to my birthday before they pull me? And I just have this epiphany that's just like that thing where a light bulb shows up in front of your head in cartoons. It was like that. It was this huge, just like, boom moment when all of a sudden I had this epiphany that was like, wait a minute. Why am I thinking about when they come and pull me? Why am I deferring the care of my body to other people? I'm coming upon my birthday, and I want to give myself something beautiful for my birthday. And I've been saying all along it's going to be being here in this place. But you know what? What this body needs, what I need the most in the world right now, is food. What if instead of pushing myself to the absolute limit, pushing my body until they have to drag me out of there because I'm on medical alert, what if instead I choose self-love as the gift I give to myself for my birthday, instead of pushing myself to the extreme? Because I am a person who has a long-standing habit of being a workaholic and giving my all and pushing myself to the extreme. And I have done that to my own detriment before. I have made myself unhealthy because the only way I will take a break is when I get sick. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, what will change my life more? A pile of money and this idea of winning, or actually choosing to put myself first rather than to feed this habit of not taking good care of myself? That was huge. And the other really important piece of footage, or one of the many pieces of footage I wish they had shown, was my epiphany moment, because I got back from my trap line and I stood in front of the camera and I was crying and I was like, oh my God, I just had this realization. I thought winning was either being the last out here or being here until they pulled me. And all of a sudden I'm saying, no, winning is choosing for myself and still going out while I am strong and well and reverent and in love with this life and this place. Not once I'm suffering so bad that I'm weak and shaky and they have to carry me out. That's not success. And the other huge part of that epiphany was, this isn't just about me. There are millions of people watching me right now, and some of them are impressionable young people and impressionable young women. And I am a person who has put my needs aside and who has let myself been treated in ways that were not good for me. And I've done that in relationships with men at times. And I was knowing that these young women are looking to me right now as a role model. And am I going to model giving over my power over my body to some other people who decide what's okay for me to do? Or do I model them choosing to put my health and my body and standing in my own power as my first priority? And there was no question from that moment that that was the biggest gift I could give myself and the biggest gift I could give the world. In that moment, I'm saying to the camera, I'm choosing this for me and I'm choosing this for you. I want to be a role model of choosing what's right over this arbitrary idea of winning and success and over money. Am I a person who has ever chosen money over other things? No, that's part of why I've rarely had very much of it. But that's a choice, and those are my ideals. And now when the eyes of millions are on me, am I going to do something that's in contrast to my highest ideals? Of course I'm not. No. So that moment, I felt deep down that the right thing for me to do was to go, and I didn't want to. It was really hard to think about that. So later that night is when I'm sitting in my shelter and you hear my dialogue being like, what's more important here, money or my body and my health? Do I want to actually give up my body's health for money? I don't want that. And what you don't see is in that moment when I'm thinking those thoughts, my ancestor plate, which has been sitting on top of my hearth rock so that I can make an offering every time I eat, the whole time, as I'm thinking, I think it's time for me to go, that ancestor plate tips into the fire. And in that moment, it was like the ancestors in the land had spoken and were saying, yes, Woniya, it's time for you to go. And it was so heartbreaking because I knew I had to. If I am a person who, pays attention to the deep messages and my intuition and lives in harmony with the land and in deep connection and listening to the land, I had to go. And it was against my will. And even so, I had that epiphany like day 70. And I still didn't go until day 73, until the day of my birthday. I wanted it to really have the impact on the world that it had on me. And at that point, I had a deep intuitive feeling of how things were standing. I felt like somewhere on a deep level, I knew that there were still 4 of us out. And then as we got into this last episode, there's something inside me knew that there were less people. And then something inside me knew when it was getting down to it. And something inside me knew that it was down to me and one other person. And that influenced me to stay longer. I pushed it a little bit more, even after that epiphany, so that I could go on my actual birthday. And then that next morning, the day before my birthday, I was walking my trap line and I was like, wait a minute, what am I thinking? Of course my traps are empty. They're going to be empty. The land already told me it's time for me to go. What am I doing? And so the next day was a medical check. So my birthday was a day that they were going to come and be checking on me. And so I knew that it was down to hours. If I didn't call them right away, then they were coming to do a medical check, and then chances were really good I was getting dragged out against my will. So my choice was to go by my own choice, and I called, as they had already told me they're coming for the medical check, I used the satellite phone and said, no, I'm changing it from a medical check to my tap out. I want you to come and get me. And I want you to realize that part of why I did was so I was still in my strength as a role model of that as I'm going. That was how I lived my experience, in my body, fully present, and that is how I left. And so many people have said to me, Woniya, were you so heartbroken that you chose to leave once you saw how close you are? How close you were? And I said, no, I picked my timing exactly right because I waited until the eyes of the world were on me. And that had the biggest impact, being so close to winning and still choosing to go by my choice and in my power and to prioritize health and well-being and self-care over money. That was exactly perfect. So in that way, I absolutely feel like I won season 6. I think there were many winners, and those of us who really lived into the experience and were true to ourselves and our intention to it from the beginning, what more could you want out of life and the idea of success and winning? So what an amazing thing to get to share with the world and to model. As you see me leaving to climb onto the helicopter with all of my goods in my arms, you hear me talking about my attachment to the place and how deeply I love it. And it was so gratifying that they showed those stills of my shelter coming down. That's been one of my favorite parts of past seasons of the show, is when someone leaves and they show that deconstruction of their shelter. And this season they didn't do that, and I was really missing it. And mine was the only shelter that they showed that for of the whole season. And that felt like such a gift from the editors. It felt like a tribute to that home and my connection to it and how much care and love I poured into that place.